Brother Steve Khaemwaset Johnson is an author and historian and a native of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, who knows firsthand the pitfalls of violence in our communities. He grew up on the very same streets that we are now losing our young people by the hundreds. His first book, Wake Up Young Black Males, Life is What You Make It, sought to reach young black men and help educate them with his personal story. His second book, How Did I Get Here? From a Cushite to a Thug, teaches the history of people of African descent and follows the journey from the ancient African Cushites to the modern day Thug. Brother Steve realized that one of the most effective ways to truly impact the lives of others is to teach them their history. He is a student of great scholars like Dr. John Henrik Clark, W.E.B. Du Bois, and Dr. Yvonne Van Sertima. Aside from writing books, Brother Steve has also been a community activist for the last 8 years, working particularly with the young generation and asking them the question, have they become prisoners of their own culture? So without further ado, and to introduce our great speaker here, we do welcome here for the second time at CCAC, and hopefully we'll have him here for plenty more times, Brother Steve Johnson.
First and foremost, I'd like to thank Brother Vlad here at CCAC for inviting me here today. Before I begin to speak, I'd like to, as accustomed to the ancient African tradition, ask for permission to speak for someone that's older than me. Do I have permission to speak someone that's older than the mid-30s? Thank you very much, sister. Just in with the tradition of our ancestors, before a person speaks, they always ask for permission from someone who's their elder. Today, I'm here to talk a little bit about the 1960s, but I'm not going to limit it to the 1960s. I'm going to talk about how the 1960s affects our lives today. A little bit more about myself. I'm a history buff. For the last 10 years of my life, I've been studying African American, people of African descent history in one way or another. Every day of my life, I study one aspect of our history or another. Before I begin, though, I'd like to take just a few brief moments to highlight some of the ancestors that have come before me, whose shoulders that I stand on. A lot of the ancestors who have been killed, a lot of ancestors who were ignored, who gave their life and sacrificed their time and their lives for people of African descent, for humanity as a whole. These people, in a lot of cases, are forgotten today. We don't remember the sacrifices that they've made. Some of them we don't even know their names, which is a very sad situation. And I'd like to just get a brief moment of silence from everybody as I read these names. First name on the list is John Henry Clark, W.E.B. Du Bois, Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, Asa G. Hilliard, Noble Drew Ali, Hubert Henry Harrison, Ivan Van Sertima, Sheikh Anta Diop, Drusilla Dungy Houston, George G.M. James, Martin Luther King Jr., Elijah Muhammad, J.A. Rogers, the Haitian revolutionaries, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, Bookman, Christopher, and Toussaint L'Ouverture, Fannie Lou Hamer, Bayward Rustin, all of the black churches and mosques that gave so much of their time and effort to help the civil rights movement last and become what it became. The black press, Brother Emmett Till, who lost his life back in 1957. Carter G. Woodson, William Leo Hansberry, Isha Musa Barashango, Theophile Obenga, Rosa Parks, Harriet Tubman, Arthur Schomburg, John G. Jackson, Roosevelt Middleton, Booker T. Washington, Ida B. Wells, William Monroe Trotter, Eric Williams, Clarence 13X, Patrice Lumumba, Some of our musicians who were very conscious and gave a lot of time and effort for the struggle of African people here in America. James Brown, Curtis Mayfield, Sam Cooke, Billie Holiday, and Nina Simone. The Black Panther Party of Huey P. Newton, Bobby Seale, H. Rap Brown, Eldridge Cleaver, and Angela Davis. And finally, all the political prisoners who are locked up in America falsely by this system. Now again, as I mentioned, can we please get a round of applause for those names that I just named, please? Those people that I named, those that you might have never heard of, please take the time to go look them up. In one way or another, they gave their lives for people of African descent here in this country. Now, as I mentioned, brothers and sisters, and I mean that to everybody here, we are all brothers and sisters in one way or another. I'm here to talk a little bit about the 1960s. The 1960s was a very, 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 very important time in our country's history. There were several different movements going on simultaneously during the 1960s that affect our lives today in many different ways. People during the 1960s were tired and they were fed up, and they took to the streets and they fought back. And they told this United States government that there needed to be some changes. Now I want to start with the anti-Vietnam War movement of 1963. Very important movement. This movement involved all people of all races, of all colors. This movement basically broke down the frustration that people had with this system fighting wars unjustly, wars for no reason. Now if we look at the African American influence in the Vietnam War, we look at a lot of black men who were sent to war and died to fight for freedom that we didn't really necessarily have here in the United States. A lot of black men and women came back addicted to drugs. A lot of them came back as zombies. But a lot of people of all colors died during this Vietnam War of 1963. It was a lot like what we just recently had, this Occupy Wall Street movement, where people were frustrated with the system and the powers that be. They were frustrated with the way that 1% of this country controls the majority of the wealth, where 99% of us are struggling to make it every day in this country. It's a very, very serious thing, and this goes across every ethnic line, right? The people at the top, in a lot of cases, don't care about color. They care about power and money. And they will do whatever it takes to stay that 1%. The next movement of the 1960s, I need everybody to hear me on this one, was a very, very powerful movement, the Black Panther Party. We probably all heard about this Black Panther Party before, but we probably got, some misinformation. The party was started by Bobby Seale and Huey P. Newton, two very powerful men. Now, Huey P. Newton was a law student, and Bobby Seale was a very skilled carpenter. Two brothers that got together in a room by themselves and came up with a strategy, a 10-point program to advance the lives of people of African descent, because in Oakland, California, in that area of California, there was a lot of police brutality, a lot of oppression. And they felt that they needed to do something about it. So the two people started a movement that spread across the whole country. Now we know that the United States government looked at the Black Panther Party as enemies of this government. The FBI director at the time, Hoover, called the Black Panther Party the biggest threat to the United States. Now when I look at the Black Panther Party as a young brother from the hood, who both my parents at one point in time was addicted to microphone. We hear?
No, you don't need that.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Then we ain't gonna use this microphone.
Try that up.
I'll try this up.
Try that.
This thing's stuck inside here. I don't know.
But the Black Panther Party, again, brothers and sisters, was looked at as a movement that the United States government just couldn't have. They did a lot of illegal things to break down the Black Panther Party. There was one thing that they came up with that we now call COINTELPRO. I don't know how many people have heard of that, but COINTELPRO was a very serious program that the FBI used to illegally phone tap, infiltrate, and break down the Black Panther Party. There was a lot of innocent people that were killed. Fred Hampton, Fred Hampton,
along with a long list of other people who were killed and imprisoned unjustly because of the system's fear of the black movement. Now, when I look at the Black Panther Party, y'all, I think of the free lunch program. When we look at the free lunch programs and how the United States government adapted to the free lunch program, they took a piece of what the Black Panther Party was already doing and implemented into the country. As a young brother growing up in Wilkinsburg, I know a lot of people probably heard of it here, we didn't have lunch. A lot of us were very, very poor. And we were able to go into different schools, different elementaries, and get a free lunch or a free meal when we were basically starving. That program came from the Black Panther Party, y'all. They had free clothing drives. They had a free ambulance service. They monitored the police. They were black men with guns that were all black. It was very, very intimidating at times. But they were very serious. They had a purpose. And they had a reason for doing what they needed to do because they seen throughout history what was happening to our people. The Black Panther Party basically blew up because of the death of Malcolm X. They knew that with the death of Malcolm X that there was something that needed to be done. Now I know today we kind of look back and say, man, that's the 1960s, how does that affect today? But by the time I'm done talking, I'm quite sure that everybody in this room will understand how that's very important for us to understand what the Black Panther Party was doing. It was eventually broken down because this COINTEL program used misinformation and lies and would tell one member of the party a different thing and the other member of the party a different thing. Would send letters to cause differences between the leadership, where the leadership broke off. One side went with Huey P. Newton, another side went with Eldridge Cleaver. So the Black Panther Party is very important for us to understand black people or people of African descent situation in the 1960s and how important they were. The next movement was the United Slaves movement. This movement isn't really talked about a lot. It's not really, a lot of people don't really understand the United Slaves movement. This movement was started by a brother by the name of Karenga, who is the person who started Khaemwaset. You heard of Khaemwaset, the holiday, which basically represents an African harvest holiday that we celebrate during the time of Christmas, started by this brother Karenga. The United Slaves Party was similar to the Black Panther Party. They had the community in mind. They understood that the things that needed to be done to help the black community at this particular time. Now the interesting thing about the United Slaves movement and the Black Panther Party is they had some rifts. They had some beefs, as we call it today, with young brothers and sisters. They had beef. And there were situations where people ended up murdered because of their arguments back and forth. These two groups couldn't get along. They argued back and forth, and the two leaders didn't agree on the direction that people of African descent should go in this country at that particular time. It saddened me to see the level of argument, level of dysfunction between these two groups, because if they could have unified, they could have worked together and got a lot more done. A heck of a lot more done if they would have organized. But as in the case today, there's a lot of beefing between leaders. There's a lot of beefing between people of power. Right now you got Tavis Smiley and Cornel West arguing with Al Sharpton, right? These different leaders, these different scholars arguing back and forth on which direction we should go in. You got one side, calling each other Uncle Toms. The other side is for Obama. So the same thing happened in the 1960s with these two particular groups, the Black Panther Party and the United Slaves movement. The next group of the 1960s is very important. This group continues to stand to this day, the Nation of Islam. When you think of the Nation of Islam, immediately it should come to your mind Malcolm X. It was started by a brother by the name of Master Farad Muhammad, who taught two people, Ugan Ali and Elijah Muhammad, the knowledge that he learned coming from the area of the Middle East where he was originally from. There's a big confusion right now in the conscious community with Master Farad Muhammad, a white man. But to me it doesn't matter, because the knowledge is the knowledge. Period. Period. There's been a lot of lectures, a lot of confusion on his, his race. But again, he influenced Elijah Muhammad, who basically built the second largest black movement in the history of the United States, outside of the Garvey movement. Right? This Nation of Islam grew and it caught fire because what they did was they had the ability to reach the young black men that were in prison. They cleaned up a lot of men. They got people off of drugs. They got women, they stopped women from prostitution. They had grocery stores. They had schools. They had a lot of businesses in the area. They did a lot of good. Now, I'm not a Muslim, but I've read the Quran and I've studied the Nation of Islam very extensively, and I see there's a lot of good that came out of the sacrifices that these brothers made. Now, the mainstream America look at the Nation of Islam as people who were, black Muslims who hated the system. They hated America. They wanted to separate. And in a lot of cases, they did want a piece of land in America for their own. But if you understand truly the story of Malcolm X, when he went to the Middle East and he came back, he realized something was wrong. Something's going on here. We're all in the same boat. All of us. If we don't fix this, we're all going down. I'm telling you right now. So those in this room right now that look at the Nation of Islam as haters or people that were evil, black, militant, aggressive black men, please understand that there's always two sides to the story. These brothers saved thousands of black men, got them on the right path where they became disciplined. The next organization, and by the way, the Nation of Islam still stands to this day. They're not as powerful, but they still stand to this day, and they're led by a brother by the name of Louis Farrakhan. The next organization that was very predominant in the 1960s, that was very short-lived, was the Organization of Afro-American Unity. Now, this is the organization that was started by Malcolm X after he separated from the Nation of Islam for different reasons, right? Malcolm X once said that we had the greatest black organization known to man, and niggers messed it up. Niggers messed it up. Now, I'm not going to bite my tongue here today, all right? We've all heard that word. Okay, and I hope I don't offend anybody by saying it, okay? But it's a word that we use. The young people use it. We say nigga, which really Tupac gave the term, never ignorant, getting goals accomplished. But I don't know how many people, when they use that word, understand that that was really the meaning behind nigga, right? And where the word nigga came from. We just use it in a way where it's a term of endearment. Yeah, but we don't understand that the words create destinies for you. Words are powerful. Language is powerful. The language we use is very powerful. It can determine how you feel about yourself and a whole host of other things. Now, the OAAU was very short-lived because Malcolm X was eventually killed, as we all know, right? We all know that he was killed by members of the Nation of Islam, who in many ways that we now know were sent there, by the power structure of the United States, because they knew that Malcolm X was getting a little too far. He started to look at our problem as a universal problem, a worldwide problem. When he stayed in the confines of America, he was okay. As soon as he started talking about going to the UN, Malcolm X had to go. And unfortunately, they used another black man to blow him away. You can go to YouTube right now and you can put in who killed Malcolm X. And the tapes will come up. One of the brothers is still alive to this day. Two people who were arrested for the crime of killing Malcolm X had nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it at all. His brother was killed right in front of his wife and his children, right? Because he fought and he cared about the lives of people of African descent. Malcolm was a very powerful man. He wasn't a hateful man. He loved America in different ways. He just understood that America was full of a whole bunch of hypocrites and had some serious problems that we have to deal with. A lot of the things that Malcolm talked about, we still deal with today. A lot of the issues. Very prophetic in some of the things that he said and some of the things that he talked about. Brother Malcolm, El Hajj, Malik Shabazz, Brother Umi Wali. I love that brother. Very powerful brother. One of the people that I give credit to changing my life. After reading his story, I said, you know what? There's some error in my ways. I need to fix myself. I need to change myself. Because growing up in the hood, you get caught into this illusion of being hood. Next thing you know, you're in jail or dead. Or you're looking for someone to blame for your situation when in reality, you put yourself in that situation. Right? Next organization, the Women's Liberation Movement. Now, all the women in here should understand this movement clearly. Now, again, all these movements were going on at the same time, simultaneously in the 1960s, y'all. The Women's Lib movement, what was their issue? Men, we've been oppressing women since the beginning of this country. Women weren't allowed to vote till the 1920s. Black women were even treated worse. Because just imagine having birth to a baby, and as soon as you wean that child, they take that child and sell it. Think about that for a second. Everybody in this room, think about that for a second. This is Black History Month. We got to deal with this history. We got to deal with what happened to get us into the situation where we're at today. Where black women are aborting their babies at all-time numbers. By the way, y'all, the #1 killer for black people in this country is not AIDS or black-on-black crime, it's abortion. Understand that. So how do we go from slavery, where the babies were taken from the woman, where today they kill their babies off? This is something that we should all think about. Women's rights. Why did men treat women the way we treat women in a lot of situations in the 1960s and today? What is this patriarchal mentality, right? See, as you study African history, you understand the matriarchal societies of Africa, where the woman was held in high esteem. The pharaoh wouldn't sit down without the queen mother sitting down first, right? There were female pharaohs who ruled the world, Hatshepsut, Queen T. List goes on and on. Very powerful women who were in control of the world at that particular time. Now, how do we get to women being respected in high regard, being able to hold any position in society, where we had early American history where women were basically told to shut up and go in the kitchen and sit down and cook me a dinner? See, this women liberation movement was important. The thing that I didn't understand was that a lot of black females left the civil rights struggle, or left the struggle of people of African descent, and joined the women liberation movement, which kind of threw a little rift there. They kind of stopped looking at themselves as it being a bigger problem, just them being a black person, and start looking at themselves as, I've had problems as a woman, which caused some break in the bond of the black male and female relationships, and I'll get to that in a second. The last one, the most important one, which we all have heard about, the civil rights movement. Now, we look at the civil rights movement as being Martin Luther King, right? But there's a story behind Martin Luther King. There's a brother by the name of Dixon, who was a leader in Montgomery at the time. And he went to Ralph Abernathy, and he said, you know what, I like that pastor, that new young pastor King. I want to get him, and I want him to come over, and I want him to run this new movement. Now, when he first asked Martin Luther King said, no, I'm sorry, I'm not interested. I'm a preacher, I want to stay in the church. But after about a week, he went and found Abernathy, and he said, you know what, okay, I'll do it. And they basically pushed Martin Luther King into leadership, because they knew he was charismatic, very intelligent, peaceful brother, who really believed in the Christianity. He really believed in the love of all men. See, Martin Luther King wasn't a fake. He wasn't somebody that was soft either. Because see, growing up in the hood, we looked at Malcolm X as more like our leader, because we looked at Martin as soft. You know, he told us to turn the other cheek when somebody smacked us. He told us to love our enemy. He believed in the Christianity. Now, whether he was right or wrong, that's for each individual to determine. But his sacrifices, as we all know, he was killed, shot in his head, because he believed in love of all, and the system understood that he was getting a little too big. And again, after he left the civil rights and started to talk about the Vietnam movement and us as being a worldwide problem, he became a bigger threat. And it was time for Martin Luther King to go, and they eventually killed him. We got to look at the students. Now, some of the students that are in here, let's understand that the civil rights movement wouldn't have been nothing without the students. The young people of that time. The young people of that time got that movement going. They fueled it. The older generation said, you know what, we can't allow our kids to go out here like that. We got to do something too. So they said, you know what, all right, let's get up and let's do something. And let's fight this. It was the youth. Understand that, y'all. It was the youth that started the civil rights movement, that allowed it to grow to where it became. We can look at the bus boycotts, we look at the different things, and I'm going to get into all that in a second. Now, when we talk about civil rights, there's two different things that we must understand. Desegregation and integration. Right? These are the things that were the basic argument for the civil rights movement. Now today we look at things of being okay, a little bit better okay, but I can tell you right now that a lot of these things are still going on today. Desegregation, the right to allow African Americans to use white establishments. Now if I'm traveling on the highway and I need to use the bathroom, I need to get some food, I understand. You might want to stop and use a white establishment. Right? But something happened to the minds of African American people during this era. Something happened, brothers and sisters. I want everybody to pay attention to this. Something happened that we now label integration. Now with integration, basically it created a loss of cultural identity where black people stopped doing for themselves and asked other people to do it. One of my elders told me a long time ago that black people in this country buy what they want but beg for what they need. We have $1 trillion budget every year. So let's stop talking about us being poor. Black people spend $1 trillion every year on consumer goods. Together we are bigger than most countries, our economy, as far as black people. But what do we spend it on? We spend it on J's, right? We spend it on gold teeth, right? I know a brother right now that live in the projects, got $5,000 worth of teeth in his mouth. You understand? What's happened to our culture? What's happened? Now back in the day we had a lot of different businesses that were black, that were supported by black before 1968. Right now today, if you look at the African American communities, it's overrun by foreign shopkeepers. Now I don't have a problem with you coming into my area and setting up shop and selling something that we need. But my problem is why can't people of African descent do that, right? If we look at Wilkinsburg right now, Middle Eastern people control Wilkinsburg. They own a shoe store, they own a corner store, they even sell chicken to black people. Do we understand that? Now why is this? Why is this? These are Iraqis selling black people chicken. Okay? Now what's happened to the black community where we can't even sell our own selves chicken? Right? It's a serious, serious thing. Back in the day we had black people who owned their own bus line. They had cab companies. One of them was called the Harris, the other one was called Khaemwaset Cab Company. We had black theaters, right? A black theater chain like Lowe's. Think about that, y'all. A black-owned Lowe's, right? The Lincoln and Lafayette. We had a railroad line in Oklahoma and Florida. We had mattress and broom factories. And we had thousands of black farmers back then. Thousands of black farmers. Today, black people, if Giant Eagle closed, we in trouble.
Yeah, we is.
We in trouble. If all these close, we are in trouble. It's a very serious thing. We don't understand that we have to learn how to grow our own food and support ourselves and sustain ourselves if the grocery store is closed, if Walmart closed their door. It's a serious, serious thing. Desegregation and integration. What happened in between those two? Why did black people start depending on others? Why do we walk right past the black business and go into a white business to spend our money that was more expensive, and a lot of times we couldn't afford it just to do it? There were situations in North Carolina during the civil rights movement where people were protesting the bus boycott. There weren't any white buses in North Carolina, certain sections of North Carolina at that time, and they said, well, we need to go find some so we can protest them. This is the condition that happened to black people during this particular era. Something happened, y'all. That's all I'm asking. It's just a think. Post-1968, we had black-owned businesses. Prior to 1968, excuse me, we had black-owned business. Post-1968, you see the black community going down, where you see a lot of ghost towns, a lot of broken down buildings. You see gentrification. For those that don't understand what that is, it's the reason why in Wilkinsburg or Homewood you have a building that's broken down for 20 years. 15 years, the same building with holes in it, graffiti on it, everything. Because we won't fix it up ourselves. How are we going to blame somebody else? Then next thing you know, they come in and they buy it cheap, they fix it up, and then they push us out of the community. It's happening all over the country. Right now in Harlem is one of the biggest places that gentrification is hitting. They're building condominiums in Harlem right now that go for $1 million. East Liberty is another example, my brother. Gentrification is serious. And how do we blame another people if we can't even take control of our own community? This is something that the civil rights talked about.
What about our so-called black leaders in peaceability in the home of work?
That's definitely part of it, sister. They're not doing much. For instance, and if we could refrain to hold the questions to the end, I appreciate your comment though. And I'll give you an example, just to address that briefly. Homewood Lincoln had the same representative for what, 35 years? I'm not going to name his name because I don't want to bash the brother, but think about that. Is there any changes in Homewood or Wilkinsburg in the last 15, 20 years? What was this representative doing all that time in office? And why were we voting him back year after year after year? Is a question we should ask. We got to hold these politicians accountable for putting them in office. It's a very serious thing. Now, this is a touchy subject that a lot of people don't like to talk about. Coming up under great scholars and being able to sit at the feet of a lot of great scholars that are alive today and watching hundreds and hundreds of hours of tape of scholars, many of them I just read earlier, practically all of them, I've studied their lives in one way or another. One thing that I've learned is that racism is real. We try to hide it, we try to get away from it. We try to say that, it's getting better because the young white generation listen to hip hop. But racism is real. Racism is alive and well. And it affects our lives. To the white people in this room, I want you to understand, it's not enough to just say that I'm not a racist. You have to stop it in one way or another in your own individual life. If you hear somebody calling another person a nasty name, which is a racist name, step to them, man. That ain't cool. That ain't cool. Right? Throughout history, I've only found a couple of serious white leaders that have stepped up. John Brown was one of them, that stepped up and gave his life in a fight for injustice. Now, racism, I like to use the definition of Dr. Claude Anderson. If you don't know who he is, please look him up. He's a very powerful teacher. His definition of racism is a group of people playing together against one another, against another group, to gain power and money. Where did racism come from? Where did the word race even come from? Right? You understand ancient Africa. You understand Kush. You understand the Bantu people of South Africa. And there's so many different examples I could name. You see that all people looked at humanity as humanity before we even invented this word called race. If you look at the Greek scholars, Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, all these scholars went to Egypt at one point in time to study at the feet of African teachers. Herodotus gives credit to Imhotep as being the father of medicine. If you don't know who Imhotep is, please go look him up. He was the first genius. He was a doctor. Very powerful man that actually lived. Now, the causes of racism are so many. There's so many. It's so intertwined into our culture today that a lot of us don't even know that we're racist. One of the first reasons is the phobia of difference, right? When we look on the news today, we look at the young brother that was killed down in Florida because his music was too loud. That's the phobia of difference. He was scared because these young guys were listening to the hip hop, to the rap music, and it was too loud. Now, when we look into the story, we see that those 3 young brothers that was in that car were good kids. They were in school, they were studying, came from a decent family. They weren't thugs. But this guy immediately labeled them as being thugs because their music was loud. So he pumped some bullets into the car, killing this young man, and they gave him attempted murder? Let's think about that for a second.
Not for him, for the other ones.
I mean, there's so many examples of this happening across the country. All right? So many different examples. Another cause of racism is the projection of blame, right? Where you look to try to blame someone else. You want to blame the victim. You want to blame somebody for being the way you are. But look at them black folks, they crazy. Now, how'd they get like that? What happened in our history to cause black people to behave the way that they're behaving? Everything has cause and effect. Nothing just happens, brothers and sisters. There's a reason for everything. Now that's that reason some of us might ignore, might not want to hear, might want to talk about, but there's reasons for everything. Another very important cause of racism is what they define as delusions of grandeur, which is the belief that one group is superior to another group just because you're a part of that group. Now this racism has plagued this country, and in many ways is eating at the core of this country. If we don't fix this racist problem, I'm telling you, it's going to get worse and worse and worse, and eventually it's going to be to the point where we can't control it. I watched on CNN just last night where the Nugent, I believe his name is, and he called Obama a subhuman. Did we hear about that? He called him a subhuman. Where does he get the nerve to say this stuff out loud like that? What's happening with the Tea Party and the things, some of the things that are come out of some of these people's mouths? Now there's issues on both sides, the right and the left, y'all. Let's make clear of that, okay? Both sides need some cleaning. They need to be checked, as we say in the hood. Okay? But how does he get off calling Obama a subhuman? I got issues with Obama. I think some of the policies that he's doing is little messed up. For instance, the Monsanto's Act, if you're not familiar with that, he signed something into law that's saying that he protects these companies to make GMOs, which is genetically modified food, right? So we're eating food out of a laboratory, and we can't sue the company if we get sick. So there's some things that Obama's doing that I find a little bit shady. But what I call him subhuman, I don't know. Now there's different types of racists. Now the first one, I derived these quotes from a brother by the name of George Jackson, who was a political prisoner, who was killed in prison. If you don't know the story of George Jackson, please look it up. You can ask me at the question and answer section, and I'll go into his story. But he broke down 3 different types of racists. The first is the overt, self-satisfied racist, one who doesn't hide their racist ways. Now that's the brother Nugent I just talked about. He's not trying to hide that he don't care too much for black people. Okay? The second is a self-interdicting racist, one who tries to hide it. Someone that'll smile at you, take your money, but as soon as you walk away, they call you the N-word. Now this is more scary to me, because I would rather know where you stand as opposed to hiding it from me. You understand? Let's talk about this for a minute. This is serious. This isn't just plaguing black people. Hate is hate no matter what. Hate's going to destroy you no matter what, in one way or another. Okay? It's a very powerful emotion. The third is the unconscious racist, one who is not aware of their racist ways. Or one that'll say, well, I got black friends. I got a couple black cousins. My uncle on my daddy's side, he married a black woman. I ain't racist. It's an illusion. It's an illusion. If you hate another human being before you get to meet them or talk to them or get to know who they are or get to see their heart, then something's wrong with you. Something's wrong with you. Right? Now, by the way, brothers and sisters, if you suffer from any one of these things, the scientists, the scholars, the psychologists believe that you need mental help, mental therapy. If you suffer from one of these, you need some help. You need some help. Because we're all in the same boat, y'all. You think them Al-Qaeda dudes that's coming over here blowing up stuff, you think they care about what color the person is? They're just American. They'll blow up any color. Let's think about this word racism for a minute. It all started, and I added at the bottom for those that can't see in the back. In 1638, the state of Maryland put out a doctrine called the doctrine of exclusion, which is still going on today, where we have businesses that exclude black people just because you're black. Don't matter. Jobs exclude you because you're black. Jobs looking at your zip code saying, okay, you want from 15221, oh, we don't want to hire him, he's from Wilkinsburg, he might be a thug. They call it red flagging, when they look at your zip code. Very serious, serious problem in this country. If we do not wake up to this and fix this, and I'm speaking to the young white people in this room, we're not the only ones that's going to suffer. You will too, in one way or another. Now I ask the question to the room here, are we better today because of the civil rights movement. Now we understand all the sacrifices that were made, all the people that were killed, all the people that died, the babies that were bombed in the church, right? You remember that story where they blew up the church where the 4 young little girls were killed? All this pain, all these emotions that we went through during the 1960s, are we better off today because of it? Now, in the 1960s, the civil rights movement, we fought for jobs, health care, and safety. This was the basics, freedom. This was the basis of the civil rights movement. Now I ask today, are we still fighting for some of the same things?
Not everybody.
Not everybody, I totally agree. Now let's look at some of the facts. Some of this will blow you away, if you're conscious. I know some of you might not hear me, but the ones that are, please look at some of these facts. In 1860, 98% of all blacks worked for white people, and in 2012 it was 96%. Think about that, y'all. Have we gotten better as black people here in this country? What's happening to us? Now the second one's going to blow you away. 2 white men have more wealth than all of the black population in the United States. Now I'm talking about Oprah and Jordan too, y'all. Just 2 of them. Bill Gates is one. Can you give me the other? Anybody? Close. Somebody with much more money than him. There's a guy by the name of Larry Ellison who owns a company called Oracle. Look him up. Those 2 white men combined wealth is more than all black people in this country. So when we talk about jobs, we talk about this, distributing wealth. It's the same thing with the 1% movement, 99% movement. Why does this one small pocket of our population have more money, where they spend money on Maybach, Mercedes-Benz cars, a $1 million car? Right? It's trickled down to the black community too, right? Because we got a lot of sports stars that just themselves and a dog living in a 19-room mansion. Huh? It's trickled down to our community where we buying diamonds, and we don't understand these as conflict diamonds coming from somebody that just got their arm chopped off.
Say it.
Wearing big diamond earrings, where you got Gucci man with a Bart Simpson diamond chain on. He paid $50,000 for it? Huh? This is trickled down to this generation today. This isn't just a problem from the 1960s, y'all. Now another startling fact is that blacks have 2 times more unemployment rates than whites or any other race in this country. We're unemployed at very, very, very high numbers. In Pittsburgh, in 2012, it reached 47% unemployed. 68% of all black babies under the age of 5 are in poverty in this area, y'all. That's 7 out of 10 black babies under the age of 5 starving. They don't get food. Now, are we better off because of this movement? Let's look at healthcare. As I mentioned, abortion rates are at an all-time high. There was a study I did for writing my second book. I found out an abortion clinic in California wasn't getting rid of the aborted babies. And I know we're eating it. I don't want to mess up anybody's stomach. But to make a long story short, the powers that be were getting rumors that they weren't getting rid of the fetuses correctly. So they did some investigating, and they popped up at this abortion clinic. And they looked around, they couldn't find it. They looked around, they couldn't find it. So somebody said, you know what, let's go out back and let's see if there's some dumpsters or something. So they looked about 100 yards away. There was a big dumpster out back. And in this dumpster, they found the fetuses of 15,000 aborted babies. 15,000. When they checked and they did the facts, 80% of them were black babies. Are we better off? 70% of black adults aged 20 to 74 are overweight. Very serious thing. We're dealing with obesity at a high level. We got 3-year-olds getting diabetes, y'all. Eating nasty food, processed food. Food that'll kill you. 2.8 million black people right now in the United States have diabetes. Think about that. Are we better off as far as health? We can look at Chicago right now, where it's basically genocide, right? In Chicago's South Side right now, brothers and sisters, The 3 major hospitals that are around Inglewood, which is the worst area of Chicago, closed and stopped taking gunshot wound victims. So these victims, instead of going to a nearest hospital, had to drive all the way up north to find some treatment. Hundreds and hundreds of young kids are dying on that ambulance ride up to that hospital. Why? Because they didn't have any insurance, the hospital said. They didn't have any insurance, y'all. So they let these brothers and they let these young kids, even some innocent now, let's be honest. Half these young thugs can't even shoot straight. So when they shoot somebody, they're killing an innocent bystander. So you mean to tell me this innocent little girl who's 16 years old doesn't deserve to be treated? It's a terrible, terrible thing that's going on right now. Let's look at safety, real quick. Let's look at safety. This is serious. Are black people safer in this country because of the civil rights movement? Right now we have something that's called stop and frisk, right? To the black people in here, you're familiar with the word driving while black, right? I've been a victim of it. Most of my friends have been victim of it. One of my friends just last week was pulled over in Plumboro, dragged out the car and treated like an animal because he was in a nice neighborhood and he was just trying to get to work. Had a book in his back seat. You ain't no thug. All the cases in New York City right now, stop and frisk, where they will stop you for nothing and ask you to empty your pockets and check you. And if you try to say anything to you, you get a resisting arrest and then they throw you in jail. Next thing you know, you got a record. Millions and millions and millions of cases of stop and frisk. Right? Now the Panthers fought for the end of police brutality. Has police brutality stopped today, y'all? Are we still dealing with the police who are killing black men, shooting black men? Huh? The one brother was killed on his wedding day. Let's think about this now. It's a very serious, serious problem. Police brutality. Now another thing, as far as safety, let's look at Pittsburgh. Let's look at our particular area here. This might shock some of you. 8 out of 10 murders in Pittsburgh since 2006 have been black people, y'all. 7 of those 8 are black men. We probably all in here have experienced that one way or another. I've had family members. I've been experiencing death and murder from gun violence since I was 14 years old. First murder I seen was 15 years old, where my best friend was killed 2 feet from me, shot 9 times by what we would call a nerd, right? A lame, a square, who rode skateboards and had baggy pants and, you know, at the time, baggy pants, you know, bell bottoms, it wasn't in style. So he got teased a lot. And one day he went to his father's cat cupboard and he grabbed a gun out and he walked down to Penn Avenue. If you're familiar with Wilkinsburg, Penn Avenue, where Angelo's Pizza Shop used to be, where we used to stand and hang out, and he opened fire. Opened fire. After about a minute of all the bullets, as I got up to crawl up off the ground from ducking from the bullets, my friend laid dead next to me. Not just recently, I had a younger brother. My younger brother was killed by a 19-year-old. Shot by a 19-year-old over a $150 robbery. One of my brother's friends had took $150 off him. And he came back with a gun and started shooting. But by the way, brothers and sisters, when he killed my brother, he shot a 2-year-old baby in the head too. So I'm not exclusive. You know, I understand the pain. I understand what's going on out here. Clearly. I've been dealing with it since I was 15 years old. I can't count how many black funerals I've been to. I lost count a long time ago. Are we safer in this country because of the sacrifices the civil rights movement made? Do we even know what happened? Do we even care? What's going on with the young generation and the music and the culture? As Brother Vlad said at the beginning, I always ask, are we prisoners of our culture today? Are we prisoners of this culture, this rap culture, this beef culture? Has this culture imprisoned our minds? Where we just do anything? You'll shoot a person for stepping on a pair of Michael Jordan tennis shoes that you spent your last $200 on. Very serious problem. 1 out of every 3, now this should startle everybody in here. 1 out of every 3 black males and 1 out of 18 black males can expect to go to jail in their lifetime. These are national facts. My sources are down here at the bottom. One of the sources are the University of Pittsburgh study, Dr. Claude Anderson's book, Powernomics, and Tavis Smiley's book, The Covenant. This book right here. If you're not familiar with this, it's a very great book. Go get it, and you'll understand a lot that's going on in the black community today. Very serious thing. The third thing is our safety is invasion of privacy. Do we have privacy today? Right? Are the people listening to our phone calls and our emails and different things, do we have privacy? Serious, serious question we have to ask each other. Let's look at some of the scholars of the past and look at what they said about the struggle of black people in this country. First, let's look at John Henry Clark, where he said, slavery isn't dead, it's still here, it's just transformed. We think about that for a second. We think of slavery, we think of, the transatlantic slave trade, but there's much more than just a physical slavery. There's a mental slavery out here today, where if you get a person's mind, you got their body. You don't even got to do nothing. Trap them in. Let's look at Martin Luther King Jr., what he said about hate. Now, to the white people in this room, let's look at this right here. Like an unchecked cancer, hate corrodes the personality and eats away its vital unity. Hate destroys a man's sense of value and objectivity. It causes him to describe the beautiful as ugly and the ugly as beautiful, and to confuse the truth as false and false as the truth. Hate will corrode, it will destroy you one way or another. It will destroy you. Dr. Claude Anderson, when he talked about jobs, he said you can't have a black business today without a black community because you won't have a market. You start a black business, who you want to sell your product to? We don't support our own businesses when we're going to go out of business. And that's why Wilkinsburg or Homewood looks the way it looks. Because instead of going to that small moms and pops, we go to Walmart. Instead of supporting that restaurant that's in the hood, we go to Applebee's or Olive Garden. Let's think about that. Malcolm X, he said, you're not supposed to be so blind with patriotism that you can't face reality. Wrong is wrong no matter who says it. Wrong is wrong, y'all. This is what they were trying to get us to see in the 1960s. That wrong is wrong. Francis Cress Welsing, the singing of We Shall Overcome will not combat white supremacy or black inferiority any more than singing any song will help solve a problem in medicine or physics. We think marching is going to get us something. Historically, it hasn't got us much, and it still won't get us much today. Marching is only one aspect of our struggle here in this country. I'm not against anybody who decides to march, but does it work? Does that strategy work today? Very serious thing we got to think about. Now, I'm gonna move it a little fast because I know I only have a certain amount of time here, y'all, but I want to ask you a question. I want everybody to think about this. The point that I'm trying to make is that we have selective amnesia in this country. A lot of people, including black, white, Chinese, everybody, we have amnesia, a selective amnesia, where we forget, in a lot of cases, the things that those that have come before us have done in order for us to just be able to walk into a store, go shop at Macy's or whatever. The countless number of people who died, who were beaten by dogs and bit by dogs and water hoses sicked on them. All these different travesties that were happening to these people. Let's look at this picture here of police brutality, where the brother was almost beaten to death by the police because he was demonstrating and fighting against oppression. This is a serious thing. They were standing up and fighting, and the police said, no, we're not having it. We have to understand the sacrifices our ancestors made to get us to where we are today. We stand on the shoulders of these great people. I would like to have seen more youth here today, but I understand that people have things to do, but the youth need to understand this. I do a lot of speaking to the young around the country, and specifically here in Pittsburgh with the CIS program. If you're not familiar with the CIS program, it's an organization that deals with young men who have committed their first crime. I see a lot of pain on their faces. I see tears, I see emotions. And the most thing that I see is I see a lack of fathers. Every month I go to a different CIS program where they have family night where the families come in. Just Brother BJ and I was there just a couple of weeks ago at the CIS in McKeesport. And I asked him, I said, who has fathers in the home? We had maybe two young brothers raise their hand. Right? Do we understand what happened to us for us to be in the situation we're in today? What happened to the fathers? What happened to the black men? Why are we filling the prison system like crazy? Why in Pennsylvania or right now are they building 4 new prisons, y'all? Huh? Now when you build a hotel, you know that you're going to fill that hotel up, right? You know you're going to get somebody to come into that hotel. So they're building these prisons. They know that they're going to fill them up. We standing in line to get into the prison. It's a serious, serious thing. We have to understand what happened to us. We have to understand history and look at the things that have happened and learn from them. Everybody can't be a history buff like me and sit all day and read books on John Henry Clark and Alvin Van Sertima. But you have to understand what happened, and you have to respect their elders. And you know, today we got this big gap between the young and the old, where the older generation is scared of the young generation because of their behavior. They talk about the way we wear our pants down and the way we talk. You know, we say yo and Ike. I have no clue how that grew to the way it is. All right, when we talk to a person and we say hey yo, and a beautiful sister will respond to that. Younger ones do. They'll stop and listen. Hey yo, this is the language. Not your generation. There's a totally different generation, sister. Totally different generation today.
Hey yo, it's female dog now.
Yeah, there you go. The B word, right? The B word. There you go. And he needs that. He needs that. But it comes from, you know, the man calling the woman a B, and the next thing you know, you got the female calling her friend, hey, B.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So it's both sides. Yeah. Right? We got young kids call themselves the B word. It's unbelievable what's happening to us. We got to get rid of selective amnesia. Now, there's 3 things we need to do to make America better and to allow black people to get to a place where we can have some sense of prosperity. In any culture, right? In any culture, you need these 3 different categories working simultaneously in order to have some sense of solidarity. You need a production and economic base, you need a culture, and you need a political base. We can look at the Jews of Squirrel Hill, right? I've extensively studied the Jews. Now, why does their Squirrel Hill look the way it looks, y'all? Where they have nice businesses, it's clean, there's no trash on the ground. They support each other.
They take care of themselves.
They take care of themselves. They take care of their own. They support each other, right? Right? They teach their children from age 2 that you go to this business, right? I read a study one time where a brother was looking for some supplies, and he went to, or was selling supplies, and he went to a Chinese merchant. He said, you know what? I'll give you your product that you're selling at a 20% discount. Right now, 20% discount. It'll save you thousands of dollars. You want to know what that Chinese guy said to him? No. I get it from my brother. I don't care what it costs. I support my brother. And this is a problem. This is a serious problem. We don't have a production and economic base. We want to stay poor. We want to stay at the bottom of every category. The cultural piece. What's the culture today with the young? Music. One frequency, the music.
Bling.
Bling bling. Right? World star hip hop. Right?
Or Vine.
There you go. Buying video games. Call of Duty or something like that.
No, Vine.
Oh, Vine, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Those Vine videos make me sick sometimes, some of those videos I watch. You know, but as a social critic, I have to watch it. I have to see what's going on. I look at the beef DVDs, right? Where you got young guys in the hood filming themselves with AK-47s. Next thing you know, the police knocking on your door because you put the video on YouTube.
Right.
What kind of culture is this? Now, we got all cultures of this country have, in one way or another, the thug epidemic. You got the thug epidemic in the Italians, you got the Irish mafia, you got the Russian mafia, right? But see, the difference is, I ain't never seen an Italian make a song about how many kilos they done sold. Okay? Let's think about that for a second. I've never seen that.
And you won't.
And you won't. Because they have a code.
A smart code.
They live by a code. Right now, black people, we have no social theory. Anything goes.
And no code.
No one will hold you accountable for your behavior today with the black culture. We have to have a political aspect. Doesn't just start or end with Obama, y'all. We got to get involved with politics. We got to understand politics. We got to vote these people out who aren't doing anything for the communities. Like I said before, that brother should have never lasted 35 years in the black community. We should have voted him out of there because he wasn't doing nothing. Very serious thing. And the black farmers have decreased 60% since 1960. We're not farming anymore. We're not farming anymore. Now, in closing, I like to talk about the mind a little bit because, as I mentioned, if you trap the mind, you got the body, y'all. Right? We have to understand the mind is a very, 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 very powerful thing. Right? Within the mind, we have things like melanin from the pineal gland. Right? Which does a lot. If you're not familiar with what melanin does, you should go look it up. Melanin is a very serious thing, and it doesn't just give us our skin color. It's anti-aging. It fights cancer. It's the reason why LeBron James jumped 13 feet in the air and can spin around and dunk a basketball. Melanin is a very serious thing. We have to understand the brain. We have to understand the mind and how it works and how it affects us. Right? We're not taught about melanin in high school, the significance of it. We're not talking about, you know, how it can affect our lives, how we need to sleep at a certain time so that it can secrete through this pineal gland throughout the body, this hormone, right? Let's look at what Dr. Naeem Akbar says in closing, y'all, about the mind. The mind is a transcending phenomenon. Each generation is a recipient of the mind which has preceded it. This is why we have culture, family, community, and nation. Because the process of culture perpetuates and maintains the mindset from one generation to the next, y'all. It is in culture that we are able to transmit what genetically is transmitted biologically. We transmit psychologically and spiritually by way of interactions we have with each other. So each of us is a carrier of the mind that has preceded us. We don't understand that, especially the young generation. We have no clue